Hey visionaries! Long time no see. I know it has been a while since my last video and I truly appreciate your patience. Life got a little bit hectic there, but I'm excited to be back and I have some amazing content lined up for all of you. So again, welcome back to the channel and a big hello to all the new faces here. I cannot believe we're at 24,000 subscribers. And if you haven't already, remember to hit the subscribe button and join our growing community all about ADHD, mental well-being, and personal development. Feel free also to check out my TikTok and my Instagram for more daily content. No pressure, only if you want to. And I'm excited to announce my Patreon is back up for exclusive content for those of you that want to support my channel a little bit more. Last but not least, if you're curious about some of my favorite things, head over to my new Amazon storefront. Again, no obligation, just fun stuff if you're interested. Also, you can find all that stuff in the description section below. That might be obvious. Today, we're going to be talking about understanding the connection with ADHD and imposter syndrome. And I bring this topic up because it's been on my mind. I think the bigger my channel has grown, the more I find myself feeling like an imposter because, disclaimer, I am not a doctor. I am just interested in personal development, mental health, ADHD. Do your own research, talk to a doctor. I just like diving into these topics, and I started noticing recently that the bigger my channel has grown, the more I was starting to feel like I was an imposter. That's what brought it up for me. I was like, why do I feel like I'm a fraud? Which, you know, I'm not. I'm pretty honest and transparent. So what is imposter syndrome anyways? Imposter syndrome is a psychological pattern in which one doubts their own accomplishments and has a constant internal fear of being exposed as a fraud or an imposter. Imposters often attribute their success to just sheer luck, connecting with certain people. Oh, they were the ones that helped me. If it wasn't for them, I wouldn't even have got here. They never credit their own abilities. They always feel like they're going to be discovered as like a liar or a cheat or a fraud or a scam or a scammer or They never feel like it's them that got them to where they're going to go. But if you know anything about anybody that's successful, they're always surrounded by a team. And I think more people, the more I talked about it with close friends, the more people I talked about it with, the more I realized everybody struggles with imposter syndrome, even people that are successful. So what are some connections between ADHD and imposter syndrome? For one, there's just chronic self-doubt. Self-doubt can be a very difficult problem for somebody with ADHD. We already have difficulty in attention. We are disorganized in our tasks. We have time blindness and issues with time management, having things that are required of us that are related in the workplace to time estimation. All of these are usually characteristics or things about having ADHD that affect our self-esteem and cause us to have self-doubt, I guess you could say. So if you have imposter syndrome, chronic self-doubt feeds the imposter syndrome. So people just feel that they don't deserve their accomplishments and they are constantly afraid of being found out because they feel internally that they are overcompensating for their inability to like work cohesively. So they're like, I don't want anybody to find out that I can't complete things on time, and you're always overcompensating and you just are constantly doubting your own ability. So whether you have ADHD or you don't, if you have self-doubt, that feeds imposter syndrome. The second connection between ADHD and imposter syndrome is inconsistent performance. So whether you do or don't have ADHD, if you're somebody that is inconsistent, it can cause imposter syndrome. So if you have ADHD, we're kind of known to be we might thrive in one area of our workplace and not really be good at another thing, or we're really good at handling some things in the home and then not others. You're good at laundry, but you're really bad at vacuuming, or you're good at, filing away things in the office place, but you're really bad at remembering to clock out. And so you get yelled at all the time. These inconsistencies result in somebody feeling like they're inadequate. Like I can do this one thing good, but I can't do the other thing. So overall, I must be just an entire fraud. And so somebody with just imposter syndrome in general, if they're constantly noticing their inconsistencies, it feels like an inadequacy. It in turns feeds that belief in your brain that if something does work out, it's just by pure chance. Like it wasn't deserved. It just was a happy accident. Like, oh, thank God that worked out, which I've definitely had a lot of those moments. And this just feeds and nurtures that imposter syndrome over and over and over because you constantly have those little moments of that happened to just like, oh, thank God nobody noticed that I forgot to do this one thing and I was able to cover up for it without anybody else noticing. Because it's embarrassing when you make a mistake. It's not embarrassing when you make a mistake. It's just more, I guess, something to make note of, and it feeds your fear of being a fraud. Like if they only knew how many times I made a mistake and had to cover up for it. It's almost like you have to work overtime to cover up for your mistakes when you do have ADHD. Like you don't want anybody to know, but in general, it just amplifies your insecurity in your head. And so you're like, I'm a fraud. I don't want anybody to know how many times I had to cover up my mistake, because only if they knew. But people make mistakes all the time. It's not that big of a deal. It's not that critical. Make mistakes for the plot. The third connection between ADHD and imposter syndrome is perfectionism, or like overachieving. Because you have ADHD, perfectionism, and I know that I struggle with it too, can be overwhelming because you're wanting to overcompensate for like a perceived weakness that you have associated with having ADHD. So for somebody just in general with an imposter syndrome, if they're struggling with perfectionism, or if you are a perfectionist, it might cause imposter syndrome, because the drive for perfection can lead someone to believe that every little mistake is evidence that you are incapable of doing anything right, which just feeds the imposter syndrome monster. Like one little mistake, I'm a fraud. Like no one does anything perfect. I don't know where we bought that lie, but obviously perfectionism is not possible. Like mistakes are a beautiful thing. The connection with perfectionism and ADHD with somebody just with imposter syndrome is, and it's very similar, is the drive for perfectionism can lead somebody to grow that imposter syndrome monster, because any little mistake that they make is evidence enough that they're incompetent. Like clearly I'm a fraud because I have a standard to here and I wasn't able to do all these little things perfectly. So therefore I'm an imposter and I don't want anybody to know. Like I have to show up perfect. And if I'm not perfect, if anybody sees a little weakness or a little, mess up here and there, they're going to know that I'm not completely competent all the time. But who is? A connection between ADHD and imposter syndrome, point number 4, which kind of blends from perfectionism and overachievement, is external validation. External validation. Can't say that word. External validation. So people with ADHD, due to our problems with self-regulation, self-management, emotional regulation, self-appraisal, people like us with ADHD usually depend on external sources of feedback to help us assess our level of success. Like we need other people to validate us. Like, are we okay? Are we seen as a success? And people with imposter syndrome, to make that connection, if all their lives they're wanting to be perfect and overachievers for the goal of having external validation in their lives, they've been so dependent on that external affirmation that they're left vulnerable to feelings of imposter syndrome, because they have to be so perfectly capable. And if they're the ones that didn't achieve that whatever goal they're trying to gain all themselves, that external validation doesn't feel all theirs. So like, therefore, I can't take this compliment because I needed someone else's help, because I was a perfectionist and I wanted to do it all myself, but because I couldn't, that external validation given to me isn't all mine because I didn't do it all by myself. We're not created to do things all by ourselves. It's okay to have like solo goals and not to only do things with other people, but to put your value on that external affirmation of doing things to have other people see you doing them. It does expose you to a certain level of vulnerability of growing what I've coined at this point, the imposter syndrome monster, the ISM. So let's shift gears a little bit and talk about how imposter syndrome manifests itself within somebody with ADHD. So just a few points. So point number 1 is attributing our success to basically just being lucky, random good timing, or other people helping us out, or other factors that were totally outside of ourselves. We cannot take the credit. It was just sheer luck. Like I myself catch myself doing that. I don't celebrate wins as often as I should, because I feel like it was just a lucky situation, happy little mistakes along the way, or thank gosh that worked out. Like things like that, I catch myself doing all the time. Sign number 2 of imposter syndrome and ADHD, or a symptom, is fear of failure. So we don't want to be found out as an imposter. So we basically are so afraid of making mistakes, and we strongly fear failing because it's just another notch in our belt of failing at something. So we basically steer our lives away from new opportunities or new challenges. We don't want to put ourselves in a position of failure or being exposed as a fraud. So then therefore we miss out on so many opportunities and new experiences because we don't want to be exposed as an imposter, which is really sad to me. I feel like we should definitely try new things, and I encourage all of us to do that. Number 3 is overworking. That is a sign of imposter syndrome and ADHD. Doing almost everything, usually in overdrive, hyper-focus kicks in to high gear to make sure that things are done perfectly, which is obviously not possible. Like, so if you're trying to overcompensate for your fear of being exposed as an imposter, you're gonna overwork as hard as you can. and then you burn out, and then you stop doing the thing, and then you have another notch in your belt of something that you quit, and then you're disappointed in yourself, and then you don't try new things. It's like a vicious cycle. Point number 4, sign, symptom of having imposter syndrome, or how it manifests with somebody with ADHD, is we do not know how to take a compliment, or we don't know how to accept praise, take a compliment, having somebody tell us like, oh my God, you did such a good job at that thing. The person feels like with ADHD, we feel that the other person is just being nice, or that they don't really know the real us, like only if they knew. Like even though they're complimenting the fact that, you know, I drew that picture really nice, only if they knew that my laundry needs to be done right now and I have a pile of wadded up clothes on my couch. What does it matter? Those two things aren't a connection. Like only if they knew the real me. Well, people are complex, no one's perfect. Point number 5 is avoiding successes, avoiding talking about it. You don't want to be the center of attention. You're shy, for example, like that right now, like messing up talking. One, that's just an ADHD thing, but you don't want people to hear your stories of successes because they're afraid of you being exposed as a fraud. And I can relate to this because I had to teach a class on social media in front of a bunch of real estate agents, and I felt like I was a fraud. And then turns out I was the most interesting one of the entire lineup of people that were speaking that day. Other people told me, and they were giving me compliments. And in reality, it really actually, I took those compliments. It felt really nice. I was like, oh, but I was afraid in the moment to stand up as an authority in social media and things like that. I felt like I was like, oh no, I don't want them to know that I don't know everything about social media. It's like, well, you're not going to know everything about social media, but you're going to know more than some people do. And some people know nothing. So give yourself credit where credit is due, and take the compliments and accept the praise, and be okay that you actually might know something more than other people. In conclusion of this segment of how imposter syndrome manifests itself with people with ADHD, it makes me think of that phrase, jack of all trades, master of none. I used to only know that was it. That was the little phrase. And I used to view it like, it used to make me feel shame. Like, yeah, I'm a jack of all trades, master of none. I'm interested in a lot of things, but I don't know everything about all those things. But I didn't realize that there's more to that phrase. And this little segment makes me think of it. This segment on imposter syndrome within ADHD makes me think of that phrase. There's more to it. It's jack of all trades, master of none, but oftentimes better than a master of one. So it's cool to be, a jack of all trades. You're interested in a lot of things. You can help people out with some things on various different topics. So it's like you have a few things that you can do in terms of maintenance on a car. Like I can change a car tire. I literally have. I can fix things around my house. I can garden. I'm not a master gardener, but I know more than some people. And it kind of took the pressure off my shoulder of being exposed as a fraud gardener, or being exposed as somebody that is not a master of anything. That's okay. We're never going to perfect anything ever. We're never going to be perfect. And that's like such a weight off my shoulders. So I just wanted to share that. Now let's talk about some coping strategies that we can use for our ADHD and that sneaky little imposter syndrome monster. So to start off, cognitive behavioral therapy is an amazing tool that can really help a person detect and question their stream of conscious, like those negative thoughts that we have that just constantly are nagging at us, and helps us then turn them around and help us turn them around, take control of them, and turn our mindset and our inner world into something positive, and help us boost self-esteem and relieve those feelings of just being like inadequate, incapable, incompetent. Alexa, what is CBT, or cognitive behavioral therapy? Take it.
From verywellhealth.com. Cognitive behavioral therapy, CBT, is a type of psychotherapy that is regarded as the gold standard for treating a variety of mental health conditions, including anxiety and depression.
There you go. And ADHD. I've been looking into a lot about how the mind can be rewired and things like neuroplasticity. So much more on that later in the future to come, and I'm super excited about that. But I have a big positive mindset right now and outlet on life with my ADHD, and I believe that we can get our brains to function internally, our thoughts and things like that, in a healthier way, and not being so negative. And learning about ADHD has really helped me, but then learning about the brain and how we can rewire our thoughts to be positive and things like that has just really revolutionized my life. I'm nowhere near perfect at it, but I've come a long way. I want to share it with you. Again, more to come. Do you want to know more about all the things I've learned about the brain? Point number 2, perfectly goes into what I was just saying is mindfulness and self-compassion. Through practicing mindfulness and self-compassion, we can literally learn to accept our flaws and come to realize that we have intrinsic value. Like, you're still a person. Yes, we have flaws. Yes, accept them. The more I've learned about my ADHD, the more I'm like, well, that's just me. It's not like a ticket to just mess up, be forgetful, be late, but it helps me to do better and it helps me to give myself a little bit more grace. But the more I know about my ADHD, the more I do better. And then also the more I know about it, the more I give myself grace and I'm mindful and I'm more kind and loving towards myself. The point number 3 in terms of coping with your imposter syndrome, getting it under wraps, getting it in control, is to set realistic goals. When you're breaking tasks into actual achievable pieces to a larger part and you work towards realistic goals and have realistic expectations that could actually be met, it builds a sense of accomplishment, competence, and self-trust, and it takes away that pressure of being perfect. Because if it's realistic, you're actually maybe going to do it. You're actually going to maybe accomplish it, and then you could be proud, and then you're not going to need help because you didn't put it off to the last minute, having to, miraculously it fell into place, but instead, put it into actionable small bite-sized pieces, use the Pomodoro technique. I know we've talked about this before, but set a timer, do it in increments, don't do it all at once. Don't put that all at once pressure on yourself because then you're going to procrastinate, wait to the last minute and do a terrible job, and then you're going to feel like an imposter or a failure. Which leads me to my next point, I guess, is point number 4 is to get support. You could either join a support group. Our community here is amazing. I love all the support that we share in the comment section below. Help each other out. I learn from you, you learn from me. A symbiotic relationship, supporting each other, making us feel validated and seen. Y'all make me not feel crazy, and you make me feel validated and seen. And I hope that you feel the same for me. And I hope that the comment section brings a little bit of like, other people get that. Other people gets that. Other people get it. Wow, I cannot talk. See, there you go, not perfect. And another great way of getting support is to go to therapy. Like I just mentioned, cognitive behavioral therapy is a form of therapy that some therapists are trained in. There's a lot of other therapies that are part of therapy. There's a lot of different techniques. I've been learning a lot about them. More to come on that later, but it's really exciting. But to be with a professional that can help you with strategies of mindset, of understanding yourself, giving yourself grace, like seeing where your brain wants to go into a negative thought pattern. It really helps you navigate outside of that vicious cycle of just beating yourself up. Like imposter syndrome is just like imprisoning yourself in your own prison of just beating yourself up and judging yourself. It's miserable. Point number 5, which I love, is to celebrate achievements. Be proud of yourself and celebrate every little success, no matter how big or small, to counteract all the negative talk that you've been feeding yourself from your imposter syndrome, which it tends to tell you you're a failure. No, embrace your successes, acknowledge them, and be like, I did that. I did that thing. I learned how to do that. I figured that out. I didn't need to ask for help that one time. And if you had to have help and they helped you, but you still got it done, like, yay, you learned how to ask for help. All little achievements should be celebrated, no matter how big or small. And I mean, there is a part of me that's like, don't just sit in that one achievement and then therefore don't do anything, but celebrate them. So many people just plow through life and never acknowledge any of the wins they have. And it just, if all you're doing is looking around and seeing how much you haven't achieved, then there's nothing for you to be proud of yourself for. I think that's really sad. I don't want any of us to just feel like complete failures. I see comments sometime where people just talk about, and I'm not trying to say that I'm not downplaying anybody's ADHD struggle because, it can be challenging at times. But when you start looking for the positive, you start rewiring your brain to see the positive and to be grateful and to be thankful. And I know that some people think that's like woo woo wah wah, but it really does. When you start looking for the positive in life, it helps you dig yourself out of that self-imposter prison that you're in, and it helps you slay that self-imposter monster. Oh. She turned off. Point number 6, which I think is why some of you are here, which is educate yourself on ADHD. Understand how ADHD shows up in your life, how it presents itself, how it affects your behaviors, how it affects your performance and inability to talk in terms of how you develop personal management strategies, how they show up as symptoms, how your management strategies currently are, how you can get better management strategies, for controlling your life, for controlling symptoms, as well as realize your strengths. The more you know, the more you know, the better you do. The more you know, the more you grow. I've heard this said before, where somebody said learning that they had ADHD was turning on a light in a fight. I'm spitting rhymes. Turning on a light in a fight. It's like they're no longer fighting in the dark. At least they know what they're dealing with. They can duck here, they can duck there. It's no longer just like, what's happening in life? Like, the more I've learned about my ADHD, the more I actually have hope that I can have a better future. And I'm not just doomed to just constantly fail. I used to genuinely think that, like, what is wrong with me? But finding out, oh, that's what's wrong with me. Not wrong, but that's what I'm dealing with is an ADHD brain. It helps me navigate the world differently and help me give myself a little bit more grace and help me keep myself in check and make sure that I'm a little bit more intentional to actually keep my bedtime habits strong, because I know I struggle in the morning. I set myself up for success the night before, so I'm better in the mornings because I struggle in the mornings. The more I've learned, the more I do better. I don't ever expect myself to be a perfect person, but it sure has helped to learn more about ADHD, the brain, gut health, brain health, body health, all the ways that I am wired. Learning about that has helped me over time, slowly but surely, improve myself one day at a time. You're not going to be better overnight, but over time, I do feel like I have improved slowly, which leads me to my last lovely point on coping strategies for ADHD and imposter syndrome and how to tackle that little beast is develop a growth mindset. And I love this so much. It basically, you want to start growing the concept in your brain that failure is an opportunity for learning and, again, growth, which brings about the acceptance of any results. Like, oh, I failed at that, I'll just do better next time kind of thing. Like, failure really is just an opportunity to learn how to do better. How many times have we heard the story of how many times different people failed at things and never gave up? I just watched a documentary about a swimmer. I can't think of her name. Alexa, who swam across the Florida Channel?
From AverageBeing.com. Diana Nyad successfully swam
Alexa,
from...
stop. Diana Nyad. I watched a documentary about her, and it's amazing. They just put a new movie out on Netflix about her, but I actually just saw the documentary first, and I watched the documentary first. Super, super inspiring. A woman that never gave up on her goal to swim across the Florida Channel, which is 100 miles from Cuba to Florida, and it took an entire team. And I don't want to give anything away, but how much she did not give up and how many times she struggled through failure and challenge and setback over her whole life and just learned from those failures and kept moving forward. I watched it with my sister and we were bawling by the end of it. Like, it was so inspiring. Like, I was like, I want to be that way. I want to learn to grow even through failure so I can accept the results and learn from those results and grow from those results. Can you imagine if you kept trying something even though you kept failing and you just kept tweaking it and kept working towards it? It would so just raise your self-esteem, like the tenacity and the resilience that you have to just embrace your failure and keep going. And whenever you keep going and you finally do accomplish whatever the little thing you said you're going to do is, how much self-esteem will grow in you. And finally, you'll develop like a really strong, healthy, proud perspective of your abilities and accomplishments. Learn to care for yourself and be like, no, I did that. I'm proud of myself. I'm proud of all of you for your desire to learn about your brain the way you are wired, because you're beautifully and wonderfully made, as the good word says. We're all people. We're wanting to grow. We're not perfect, but it is worth fighting for yourselves. And I'm really proud of you for showing up to this video to want to learn better about yourself. And I'm just really grateful for all of you. I feel like I'm going to get emotional. I'm really grateful for all of you that have still just stayed around, given me so many loving words, and I take those compliments. It literally has given me so much life over the past few years, and I'm just so excited for everything I have planned. I have so many exciting things planned. I've been really fighting hard for better mental health, gut health. We're going to talk so much more about that. I'm so excited. And I'm just so proud of all of us visionaries. Let's envision better lives for ourselves. So with that said, that is all I got. I hope you enjoyed the video. And as I always say, you must know by now that you are in my prayers. I'm so thankful for all of you. And I will see you next time. Bye.